Hey, Monica, thanks so much for being on the podcast today. So glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Heather. I'm so honored to be here. This is very humbling. I'm just happy to be here and chosen and be your friend.
So this is kind of a fun one too because I love everybody that I interview, but I'm not real life friends with everybody that I interview. Like I don't see people like at the commissary and at basketball games and at the gym. And so the really fun thing about this is that you are my real life friend, my day-to-day friend. So this will be super fun to have you on today. And we also share a shared journey of being military spouses. We're both Air Force spouses married into the Air Force. And for about the same amount of time, we have been, and our kids are about the same ages. And so we just have this really fun shared journey. So I'm super excited to share your story today. And just to begin with, can you just start by introducing yourself?
Yes, I am Monica Sullivan. I am married to Bill Sullivan. I scooped up my Indiana boy, like you said, about 19 years ago from the Air Force Academy. I was a local girl, so I'm a fourth generation Colorado Springs native, which is kind of
Wow.
rare.
Yeah.
And I'm the baby of five kids, which we also kind of have in common because you have five kids.
Hmm.
And so, just really, really blessed. I have four children, ages 17 to 10, and they go to the local schools around here. And I asked my girlfriend, okay, so what would you want somebody to know about me if you were introducing me? And she said that I love really hard, and so
Oh,
that
yeah.
was kind of cool. So, but I'm a bona fide hugger. I love to hug, and
True.
I it's been so fun hugging you and having our little classes with our aerobics classes
Yeah.
and, going, "How are you?" It's so fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So much fun. I would say I love what your friend said. It is so true that you love so hard and you are a joy spreader. Everywhere you go, you are spreading joy. So I love your enthusiasm and thank you for introducing us. So you have been a military wife now for 19 years?
Billy's been in 23 years, and I've done the journey with him for about 21 of those years between dating and engagements and long distance and all of that stuff. It's been a really incredible ride. Highs, lows, pushes, pulls, all of that incredible stuff, but I'm a proud military spouse for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about those highs and lows. Just tell us what are some of the best of it, some of the worst of it, some of your best memories, some of your worst memories. Just let's hear it all.
So I have definitely been blessed with the why of going to certain bases, just kind of some of those things. So we dated and met and married here in Colorado Springs up at the Air Force
Mhm.
Academy. And my husband, I was big pregnant, and we were looking at our first assignment going away as a small little family thinking, oh, Texas, one of those
Yeah.
places just. And my husband got the assignment that we were going to the Azores. And so it was where? What are you talking
Yeah.
about? Azores. Where is that? How do we even spell that? And so then he went to his boss because it was supposed to be a 15-month unaccompanied, which in the
Um,
non-military world meant that he was going by himself. And so he went to Dr. Mew at that time, the superintendent over the academic or the athletic end of things. And he's like, "Sir, my wife is pregnant. What do we do?" And so then Dr. Mew gave us a VHS of the Azores and a VHS of Yokota Air Force Base in Tokyo. And he said, "Here, you get to choose their 3 years to Tokyo or 2 years to the Azores." And we popped him in, and there was the Yokota subway system that was, pushing people in, and all of the stacked houses, all of that. And then we popped in the Azores, and there was the donkeys in the front yard. And I'm a farm girl. I was like, "We're taking the donkeys. Here we go."
Going with that
S
one.
We're going with that one. And so the why of that was that it really did allow Bill and I in our little marriage and our little family. Allie was 6 weeks old when we landed on island. We had her early by the grace of God. All of his wives were just working And we were able to go, and the high of that was that we were able to go to Italy. And I had been to Italy on an exchange trip, or kind of a study abroad with my college. And so sitting there with our little family, in the middle of Verona and
Mm.
Venice, and we went to this vineyard that I had been to where my professor had done a year sabbatical. So it was just a dream come true and a big why. So that was a high. And then the low was definitely our move from New Mexico to Las Vegas. And Bill was deployed from New Mexico. I think I told you about this standing in the
Yeah.
hallway.
Yeah, yes,
And
yes.
it was just one of those things that, like, if it was going to fall apart and not be okay and not work well, that was what was happening. So Bill was deployed. The gentleman who came to get our goods showed up, and he underestimated our goods by about half. I had all four kids and they were little, and our youngest, excuse me, she was still nursing little bitty toddler, not even walking yet. And so they come with a truck that didn't even have like a quarter of the capacity of what we needed to. We we had a rainstorm where the sniffies of my kids, like their little prized possession,
Yeah.
floated across a pond of water. We get there and our stuff had to go into storage, and so we couldn't put
Mm,
anything together. And like I say, Bill was deployed, and it was a very, very hard deployment for him as well, Heather. It was just one of those things that this was our second deployment, and we really felt like the first one that we kind of came out of it and stronger, and seeing the why in that one too. But this one, when we were in it, was like, Lord, I don't understand why this is so hard. I got very, very frail on
mm,
that one. And but then what the why that came from that low was, God said, I'm enough. I've got to be
mm,
enough. And I'm all that you have. And so me and my little family, got everything kind of going as much as it was. We got the house all set up. We got
mm.
him homeschooling. Billy came home, and we kind of looked at each other and we're like, okay, we did it. We went through that together. I ended up
Yeah,
having to have surgery because of the weight loss that I had suffered because of it.
the stress. Mm,
Stress, tremendous, tremendous amount of stress, Heather. So that was definitely the low. But just to the listeners, just giving God that ability to kind of give you the why and really leaning into Him. It's a really, I don't know how anybody does life,
mm.
let alone military life, without leaning into God,
Yeah,
leaning into His Spirit.
absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel like every high and every low you've had, every piece of the roller coaster ride
Yeah.
that we've been on in this military life, do you feel like at every time you've had that why answered?
Yes, absolutely every single time. It
Mm.
it's never in our time,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's been one of the things that I just feel so grateful for, is that God hasn't left me in the dark. Literally, He's
Yeah.
yanked me out of the dark to, like, Monica, this is what it is. And that is so humbling when our omnipotent, wonderful, tremendous God that transverses time, transverses,
Mhm.
I mean, we're still learning about universes that are going out, and that big of a God would love
Yeah.
me enough to give me a why on my little section of a journey. It's really, really humbling. So, yes, the whys have always been answered.
Mm, mm.
What
And
about
how
you?
strange. Well, I think yes. I think yes, but I think what you said is so true, Monica, like, not always in our time.
Yes.
I
Yes.
remember moving to one location, and the children will remain unnamed, but I remember going to one location, and it was just so hard, and the kids would come home from school, like, crying, like, boys
Yes.
and girls, like, crying, and so I just took my little car, and I drove through the Starbucks, and I got a Starbucks cup of coffee, and I just drove circles around their school I'm crying and I'm praying over them. Like, Lord, like,
Right.
let someone be a friend to them today. May they have someone to sit with
Yes.
at lunch. So I think that sometimes, I mean, yes, I feel like it always is answered. The whys always answer, but at
Mhm.
the same time, it's not always when we want it. Like, it's not
Right.
like we move in and it's all roses for everybody, right? Like,
Yes,
there can be
absolutely.
a lot, and it can be an entire move until the very end that we're able to look back,
Yes.
that it can feel so hard for some of the children. So,
Yes.
and
I
I think as
definitely have
moms,
felt that.
yeah,
Mhm.
and I think as moms, we feel that because so much of our emotions are wrapped up in the happiness of our children, right? Like, are they doing well? Are they settled? And so if they are, then we're good. But when they're
Right.
not, our own spirits are feeling that
Right.
stress.
Right. And I have
So,
definitely, felt that and can attest to that, that there is just certain moves that the whole thing I relate my time in Las Vegas as the dark night of my soul, because it
mm,
wasn't a church, it wasn't a group, it wasn't any of those things that I could really latch onto. And but then looking back, you're going, "Oh Lord,
yeah,
you walked with me. You gave me exactly who I needed when I needed it."
yes.
And it wasn't XYZ move. It wasn't some of these other bases, but it was still so humbling. And
Mm,
looking back on some of those relationships, it was like, those were the people you put in my life. Wow, I'm not worthy.
hmm, hmm. I think that's such a beautiful reminder that even in the dark seasons of our soul, the dark places, that God will still show up, right? And he will still care for us, even when the feeling is overwhelmingly difficult. Like, maybe
Mhm,
we feel pain or we're sad or it feels like upheaval or whatever the
yeah,
emotions are associated with that,
mhm,
that we can look back and say, oh, but God was there. Like, God was
yeah,
so present
yeah,
and giving us exactly what we needed,
mhm.
to sustain
The
us and to get
abandonment
us
that you
through.
kind of feel in it is
Yeah.
real, but then as it goes along, then he's like, "Do you see I was the biggest one?" And that's crazy.
Yeah. So well said. That's so well said. And it's a good reminder, too, that the abandonment can feel really real and we don't want to dismiss that pain.
Mhm, mhm.
But that God is the biggest one carrying us literally at times. So,
Absolutely.
through all the highs and lows, we've already talked a little bit about this, but through all the highs and lows of the military life, what is something that you've learned about God that you really, really treasure about him?
Just that through all of it, that he is absolutely there and he loves us beyond our I through the studies and the times that he's given me, that the nods that he gives me when when I look at who I could have been just staying here as a, local Colorado girl
Mm,
versus who he's allowed me to partake in and to be a part of this master plan. I just I I see the vastness of his love. I
mm,
see how we had a priest once that said about the tapestry, and that when as a young church and as a young, followers of our Lord, that they were not able to see the tapestry and how it's all woven. And at this time and at this place where you and I are at, I feel like, that so many things scientifically are coming out. So many of the knowledge is starting to kind of come together in this tapestry that we can really see it.
mm,
And it's so undeniable when you're a believer to see that God is so real and how much he loves us, and the fact that these little bits of tapestry like start to come together. And I really feel like that's where I've grown in his love, is being a
mm,
part of this journey where you get plucked up and you get put down, you get plucked up and you get put down, you get
mhm,
plucked up and you put down. And these people that he puts in your life, it it's like this dance and it's like this tapestry that I am so humbled by being allowed to. And I feel like if I would have stayed small town, not married my military man, I feel like I wouldn't have been able to see. I would have been veiled to
Uh,
so much of that.
and I wonder too, is as I've also moved throughout so much and lived
Yeah.
overseas and even
Mhm.
in a predominantly Muslim countries that we've lived in, like the body of Jesus, the body of followers
Yes.
of Jesus are so like they're everywhere and they're
Yes.
strong, faithful believers. And I wouldn't have seen that also if I think about my life and if I would have stayed in, one place. What I feel like has been a blessing come out of the hardship of always getting plucked up and put down and plucked up and put down is actually seeing the followers of Jesus that are everywhere and
Yes.
having their faith be such an inspiration to my own faith.
Yes. Yes. It's humbling to be put in so many different places that you become and are a part of a chapter of
Mm,
women like yourself, Heather, of women that that I've like I've told you before. I want to have them know what they mean to me, and it's just it gets it gets really big when you let him be the biggest. He
yeah.
kind of I feel like he kind of reveals like more of a plan, more of a surrender, of a
Mm,
trust, and then it's like, "This is how big I can go. This is how much I love. This is the miracles that
mm.
really can can come about with a plan where you just do as a military spouse, you just throw up your hands and here we go."
I love that though, but because what you said was so key, but because because we are called to so often, and
Yes.
not just military spouses, everybody is called
Yes.
so often to surrender, then
Mhm.
because of that, in that surrendering, you actually get a bigger view of who God
Yeah.
is
Yes.
and what he can
Absolutely.
do in our
Mhm.
lives.
Mhm. Mhm.
I also loved this is gonna go way back to something that you said here when I asked you at the very beginning about what you have what you really treasure about God, and just you talked about his great big love. And I think what is so beautiful about you, Monica, is that his great big love that you treasure is so evident through you. Like when you are a woman that treasures God's just great big love and you can surrender yourself to him and to his will for whatever your life holds, like whatever that assignment in particular holds for you. If you can just say this is God's great big love and you treasure that, you're able to be a better funnel of that love to other people. And it's so when you said that, I was like, of course, that's what she treasures most because it's so evident in the way that you love other people and the way that you care for other people. So that is just
Thank you.
a beautiful thing to treasure. And I can absolutely see that shining through you as well. Are there any, as you've been going through the upheaval and the all the upheaval, is there I don't even know how to describe it, right? It's like you said, it's being plucked and replanted and plucked and replanted. Are there any Bible verses that you really love and hold dear?
Yes, absolutely, and I had to write these down if I can find them here and if I can read them because my eyes are going. But
Mine too. Mine too.
Philippians definitely speaks so much. Philippians 4, 6 through 7. Rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. Do not be
Mm,
anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your request to God. And then also Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to him, and he will make your path straight. I feel like that's kind of like really the quintessential difference from what I've seen personally. And I know that there's a lot of other different nuances that I'm not taking into account, but just my personal is that we don't get to plan. We don't get to plan. I was
mm,
talking to my husband about this, and he said we were talking, and for our lives, things come so fast and in
mm,
bunches, and we don't get to plan. And so when
mhm,
you have this faith that is such a tremendous gift, then those words, those biblical words just really do speaks so much to our hearts of
Hmm.
just be not afraid. Be not afraid, be not anxious.
Hmm.
I'm holding on to you. I've got you. Be it a sparrow, and I love you more than the sparrow. All of those biblical words are just so profound.
Hmm. And to, like your first verse said, to trust in the Lord and then to rejoice in whatever plan he has for us, whether it's,
Yes.
a beautiful, fun, great assignment that everybody's excited about, or if it's one that brings hardship, right? And
Mhm,
to
mhm.
rejoice in the Lord in those moments.
Yes.
So when you marry those two verses,
Mhm.
it becomes like a buoy for us
Yeah.
through the upheavals of the military life
Yes.
as well.
Yes. Yes. I feel very much that he has such a special assignment for us as military wives. Um, we
Mm,
get it. I don't know about you, but I've gotten it a lot where it's like, I don't know how you do it.
yeah.
And my my reaction is, I don't know either. You just
Truth.
do. You just do. And you get a little seasoned after a certain time. I remember certain assignments going to, New Mexico and that, and having people just kind of cross my path that are like, oh, it's awful if your husband tells you that you're going there. Just, oh, I would not ever. And those, like you say, those whys, and you're going, at the end of it, going,
Yes.
"No, no. Just let God into it, and he will show you why, and he will show his incredible goodness in it too." And I feel like that there's a special bond that comes with your spouse too, and definitely what I
Mhm.
don't want to forget and neglect to say how important it is. And for the listeners out there, always build up your marriage. Find friendships that build up your marriage.
Mhm.
Even if you can't find friendships, then just have your marriage be number 1. God number
Yeah.
1, your marriage number 2, and the fruit of that, it becomes miraculous.
Hmm. I love watching you and Bill relate, and so I know that the military has extra challenges for a
Yes.
marriage because of the amount of time that we need to spend apart from one another. So
Yes.
TDY's deployments, TDY
Mhm.
for people listening that don't know what those are like short deployments and then long deployments. And so any advice that you would have to offer to the young military spouse who is looking, towards a future, a longer term in the military, and they're looking at, man, I'm going to be like separated often, and then the stress sometimes of the work life of being in the military is just a unique kind of a stress. And so, do you have any advice for those young spouses?
Absolutely. Lean into your relationship with God. My husband and my relationship with God has been a little different, and reading the
Mm,
Bible, our ability as wives, we can just have God right there present when we're washing the dishes, when we're
mm,
when we're doing all of these, just mundanities of things, the Martha and Mary moments of
yeah,
our lives can
yeah,
really have. But even if his isn't there, hold on to him and just bring him along, and be just be ever present to him and find ways to build him up.
mm,
He what I've found in my husband and my relationship is he's going TDY. He's going, and he's constantly, the need is always there for him to be somebody else's buoy, somebody else's,
yes,
like the calls and the constant times of when he'll come home to you and he'll be like, you can't make this stuff up.
yeah,
And building that marriage up and working really hard to build that marriage up, then, and praising him allows him to praise you too. And 100% finding yourself in friendships. I've got a drop a cue for her, for my best friend Jenny and Joe Sunday. They came into the Azores with us 4 months after
mm,
we were there, and I was really flailing at that time in my life. I mean, I was frail because my birth didn't go very well. Everything was fine, what I can control, but was very frail. I was very scared, and I had not experienced deep Catholic Christian friendships yet.
Mm.
And my
Mhm.
best friend Jenny came from a high of being in this women's group and of just a wonderful expression of God's love and community. And we linked in and had my husband's commander's wife, and we made this kind of Catholic Women in the Chapel. And there was times when I was frustrated with Billy, and I had struggled up until that moment. I had walked out when we had had a fight, and I
Mhm.
walked out, and here's the chaplain walks by, and I'm teary-eyed, and, "Hi, Monica, how you doing?" You're going, "Hi, sir."
Ah!
I'm gonna go back inside. And so we learn to communicate. We learn to say
Yeah.
status checks is what we would call them. Status check.
Mm.
This is what I'm feeling. What is it that you're feeling? Where to come together? The communication. Keep over talk, emphasize on talking and giving your perspective and not the attacks. But Jenny, at that time when she came into my life, there was this buildup of our marriages
Mm.
that she taught me
Yeah.
that as a friend and as a best friend, we don't tear down our husbands. We're not going to sit around coffee and babies and rag on our husbands. And when you find, and that's the biggest advice, is when you find yourself in friendships like that, they are very toxic. I can't emphasize that enough, that
Mhm.
there are friendships and there are times that you're going to have to remove yourself from, because your number one call is to be a daughter of God, and that's where he's called us to be on this
Mm.
earth is in the domestic church, and that's with our husbands.
Yeah, yeah. It's so important what you talked about, communication, but I think also just having that older spouse mentorship, older wife mentorship.
Yes.
I mean, I
Mhm.
just am even as you're speaking, I'm thinking last night we have had to our house like 2 couples and they both have mentored us at different times. But one
Yes.
in particular, Rana is her name. Like when you moved to the Azores first and we moved to Altus, Oklahoma first, and I was like you, like I was flailing, like I was a mess. It was hard. Like I got taken out of everything that I knew and that was comfortable
Mhm.
for me and I got moved to I didn't go overseas, but I mean, it felt like I had moved to the moon. And just having an older woman to walk
Mm.
alongside of me and to
Mhm.
mentor me and to,
Mhm.
have coffee with me or serve me ice cream and brownies and sit and talk with her about the first few months of marriage, like that
Yes.
was life changing. Like it set my marriage on such a positive trajectory that I
Yes.
think if I didn't have that in my life, it would just be different. I would have missed out on so much richness and depth
Mhm.
to my
Mhm.
marriage that I'm
Yes.
just like you, I'm so thankful for that.
Yes, yes. We shared a stoop with Chili and Peggy Ornelas, and talk about just a couple that became grandparents. And definitely that's another piece of advice is go find those people. Be bold, like you said in Bold Mercies. Be bold enough to set yourself out there. It's going to scare you. Do it afraid. Don't
Yeah.
say, "Oh, be not afraid." That one just doesn't resonate with me. Be not afraid. It's a great song in church and all, but I'm like, you
I'm
just got
still
to do it
afraid.
afraid. Still afraid. What do I do with this? Do it afraid. And just going with, that journey with Chili and Peggy Ornelas and having them, she was a Dodds teacher and he was a retired lieutenant colonel, and having them scoop us in as a little family and how much love that they shared with each other, how they built up each other, how they protected each other. They protected each other and us so much that we didn't even know that Chili was sick until after our son was born. And all of those pieces of, like I say, this tapestry that God says, but
Mm,
that's definitely a big piece of advice is be bold to go out there, do it afraid, find your tribe, and keep looking. And some tribes that you think, oh, this one's going to be great. It's okay if it's not.
yeah.
Don't stay in toxic. Get out of toxic.
Yeah. So speaking of community, something that we have to do as military spouses, as military wives, is find new communities always, because you and I are we're very gregarious. We don't want to, we're not going to be wanting to sit at home, well, okay. A lot. I have to be honest. If it's
Yeah.
been a crazy week, I want to sit at home. But other than that,
Lock the door, pull the shades,
I
hide.
know, hide. But if it's not been a crazy week, no, we're both the same. Like, community is so vital. And honestly,
Yes,
community, and we just were speaking about that, community is the life raft for military
absolutely.
spouses. But
Yes.
how have you found that as you move so much and you're having to rebuild this community, how have you found that? Like, how have you, like, nuts and bolts, how have you found a community as you've been moving so often to different locations?
First and foremost, pray about it because
Yeah.
like my action of it would be a hot mess. If I try to put it on me, holy moly, it gets ugly. But when I have called myself back and prayed about it, then the Holy Spirit really does speak. And so what I have done, and I've kind of, you know, lengthened them out. So this is my little piece of paper here. So in the Azores, like I've said, Jenny Sunday, Lisa Gallant, those were when I was frail, and those were the my first introduction
Mm,
too. So from that, I learned I had to have that community in my
yeah.
life.
Yeah.
And when I left that community, I was really hurting. Our first was Florida. Our first move, I had little bitty babies. I had Allie and Logan, and we were away from the base. Bill was at headquarters, and so me getting a hold of him and having that
Yeah.
be a tribe where it was in the base, where it was kind of there for me, where I just kind of had to, you know, look out my door because literally I was shut in my door in the Azores. The phone sounded weird, everything was weird. We were, flying along it in this car with stone walls. It was just really crazy. So then I
Yeah.
go to Florida, and we were on an acre lot, and so there wasn't even close neighbors. There was no sidewalks.
Mm.
But when I got that God nod, our good Lord was like, "No, don't stay in that church. Go find another church. This isn't
Mm.
where I wanted you to grow. This isn't where you're going to grow." So I went to another church, and the dear lady there was like, "We have a women's Bible study, and they will take your kids." And it was like,
Oh,
"Oh,
you'll take my child for 2
you'll
hours and
take
I can
my
talk
two
about yeah, talk about Jesus with other women?
Can I kiss you and
Please.
hug you on the forehead? Wow, thank you, thank you. So that was just such a wonderful thing. And then there was, a mama that was walking by, and I literally threw my kids. I mean, not throw, but here we go.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go. And I stalked other people in my neighborhood. And so then it ended up just being a wonderful, fruitful thing. Two ladies down the road, we did a little preschool, just wonderful. Cami and Amy, they were just wonderful expansions of just Christian love and just love itself, love
Yeah.
incarnate of how much they love me and love my kids, and brought all of our kids together in that community. And then so that one was kind of, once again, all I had to do was plunk myself there, and it
Yeah.
was given. But what I learned from that was then going to Alabama, we we started kind of our own, and it was the year of Alabama, and once again that was the year where people like, "Oh my gosh, ACSC, Maxwell." I
So it's
loved
just like
it.
1 year of school and you loved
1
it.
year of school, I loved it. Once again, we lived in Prattville, Alabama, and the church that we were at was not a positive thing for me. But I had
Mm.
learned from, and the good Lord told me, "Go where you can be fed." And so I drove out to Wetumpka, Alabama, tree covered parish, and the people there were so warm, and they were like, "Are you here for just on a visit, or are you staying?" And I'm like, "We're staying." Scooped in my babies, scooped in all of us as a family, a wonderful little teeny tiny Irish priest that was Father Kelly. And when we had and were expecting our third child there, he touched my belly and goes, "Oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph, I hope you have twins." And I was like, "Oh, Father, what are you doing?" But that's where I learned that you go and you find your community. So that's
Yeah.
when we started our first, and the group that we had, our first Rock with Mama, raising our Catholic kids.
Uh-huh.
It wasn't a mama thing at that time because there was fathers and mothers, and we were just a big group
Group.
of. And so then we went to New Mexico, and that was once again where I could be plunked into a wonderful parish, and our church, our base church, was wonderful.
I
But
love
we
it.
had our second rock, and then that was the Rock with Mama. And what I found with that time was, if it doesn't exist, go make your own. Like you said, we're very gregarious. Um, I need a community. I need my sisters in Christ that I can go deep with. I can
Mhm.
talk to. I can open up to the Holy Spirit, and they're not
Mm.
going to be set off because they're going to have their own Holy Spirit
Yeah.
moments. And that's where the fruit of the Spirit and the light really just does shine. And so, then Las Vegas was tough, but as I was telling you, when my surgery happened, I just had two angels, Tammy and Yvette, come, and they took our kids, and so there was no family, but God
Yeah.
presented these angels on earth for us, these little saints in the making
Mm.
that took and loved on us, and that we were, privy to those friendships is just
Yeah.
incredible. And so then in Virginia, that was the big one of like, okay, Monica, here we go. And it was the calendar year of like the listen to me and go to work. Like that was the homilies in church, that was the
Mm.
scripture readings,
Mhm.
and it was all of that that accumulated, because from Vegas to Virginia, it was like I walked into this church at Nativity, and Nativity Catholic in Burke, Virginia was like Chick-fil-A. It was like the quintessential perfect.
Yeah.
Everything was there, and it was so full. And I spent the whole first year just crying my eyes out because of joy. It was
Oh.
so beautiful. But then God
Mm.
goes, "Okay, now get to work." And
Yeah.
I heard him, and it was, "Use your talents. Here we go." And I sat there with on book study in the little Catholic school, and happened to bring up this book that I read, and Audrey Assad, this
Yeah.
singer, and
Mhm.
this beautiful gal across the way was like, Walking with Purpose? And I thought that she was meaning this little book that I had read. Yeah, I know Walking with Purpose. And she goes, you need to start a group. And I go, excuse me? Start a group of Walking with Purpose. What do you mean? And Walking with Purpose is, as I found out, like a MOPS group. It has a structure, and it has all of this framework, and it was trying to get a priest and a pastor, and all of the framework
Oh.
and that, and God was like, no, you're going and doing this. And at the same time, my friend was being told the same thing, no, you're doing this. And we came together on this like internet site for Walking with Purpose, and the lady, the coordinator, calls me, do you know Jennifer? No. Well, yes, kind of. And do you know Monica Sullivan? Well, yes, kind of. And so we came together, we're like, what? And so this produced for Nativity Catholic this year of us giving. She's been able to carry it on, and I had the year of helping her start it up, but it was 100 strong of
Wow.
women in this Bible
Wow.
study, and
I
it
love that.
really spoke to the heart. It
Mm.
spoke to the need and the heart, and the language of a woman's love. And
Mm.
it was just, like I say, where God wanted you to go. And so then, coming from Virginia, we were there for 5 years, and I'm back home, and I kinda had thought that it was going to be X, Y, and Z, because I felt like I was always the one that was kinda keeping my family, together, and the communication that I had learned, and that. But it's been a challenge, and my father fell ill,
Yeah.
Heather, about a
Mhm.
year ago,
Yeah.
as you know, and my mother is in hospice, or, like, helping him hospice care, but
Yeah.
she's not well, and all of those things that God is just saying, Monica, this is your why, but it's not easy. But I was waiting, and I was waiting, and I was waiting to see if God wanted me to start another women's group.
Yeah.
And I was like, but I don't know if I'm going to be here. I don't know if this is the time. And God once again told me, go in haste. And
Mm.
so that's where I'm at, and that's the last thing that I've just done is start another rock with mama, which will hopefully be, but just starting those groups and definitely,
Yeah.
encouraging women, go start a group, go talk to your parish, go talk to your friends, go put it out on Facebook. I've seen some of that with our Facebook group of, does anybody else want to start and do a women's
Mm.
Bible study? And I praise them so much because
Yeah.
it's lifeblood. It's a life raft,
Yes.
like you say.
Yeah.
So important.
I like also, you're using this imagery that you were talking about, this analogy at the beginning that you were talking about this tapestry. Here we are 19 years into our career, I mean, married career, and, our husbands have done more than that, but, we're married into it this long.
Yes.
And just being able to look back and the
Mhm.
treasure that it is to look back. And here you were a
Yes.
young mom and you weren't at the place that you were starting something, starting this big group yet, but you were finding them. Like you were finding your people, whether, it was on a playground or neighbors
Mhm.
or in
Mhm.
your parish. I mean, you were finding your people and you were like gonna find them, right? And
Yes.
then
Yes.
now here you are on the older end of
Mhm.
military spouses, and we're able to give, right? We're able to give now that our kids are teenagers and they're older.
Mhm.
We're able to organize, to lead in ways that you weren't before. And just
Mhm.
seeing that as the tapestry that God taught you all these lessons as a young military spouse. And now you're actually able to be able to hand those back out
Mhm.
and say, "This
Mhm.
is what I've learned. This is the journey that God has brought me on. This is what I've learned about God." And so you're able to offer those back to the young wives. And how special is that? That God takes all of us on that journey, and what a blessing it is that you've been able to bless those younger military spouses. And I know one in particular in your group that has just love here in Colorado Springs that has just loved it. And so what a blessing that is that you've been able to offer.
Well, that woman is wonderful. I She was a part of what I look back on with Las Vegas. She was a part of that story that you know you don't
Yeah.
feel worthy of, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but yeah, just it's so fun linking best friends together too.
Yes. Yeah.
And that you can
Yeah.
be a part of that. That's been one of the things that I realized in the last probably 7 years is that God goes, "You know that person? Ooh, there's this person," and that's where I get really loud and excited. "Ooh, you need to talk to blah, blah, blah." That's so fun. That's one of the big, big gifts of it, and it's just, like I say, it's humbling me on this
Yes.
journey.
Yeah, what a beautiful tapestry that God has woven for you, and that analogy is just so prominent in my own life. The
Yes.
analogy of the tapestry and how God has taken all these seemingly random threads as often as we've moved
Yes.
and all the friendships that we found and picked up and has woven them together in a really beautiful
Right.
and powerful way. Um, just makes me very, very thankful for what God has
Mhm.
done in our
I
lives, in both of our
I'm
lives.
so grateful for our friendship too. I remember, we were doing the um the tour of the chapel that's under this big ice cube and just
Yeah.
looking across and being so drawn to you and going into the cage with the falcons with you
Oh,
and snapping that silly picture right away
the
and but then
stinky
going from that
falcons.
those stinky falcons and just being a part of like who you guys are and hearing Ben speak when they had the laying of the wreaths and seeing you and Ben be together, that was very humbling that I could be a part of your life
Mm,
and claim you as a friend. It's just a beautiful thing that God
yeah.
has given me. So thank you.
Yeah, it is a beautiful thing. Friendships are a beautiful thing, and we need to really treasure them. And as I told you at the beginning, I collect friendships like I collect seashells, and I keep them all in the jar of my heart, and I just kind of carry them as we move from one place to the other. Well, in
Yes.
closing, I would love to ask you, what is one thing right now making you happy?
My God nods. They bring me such joy and consolation. Heather, it's when God will wake me up or when he will and has. So we've gotten our assignment and it was not when we thought we would get the assignment where we thought we would be, but we were hoping here. That was our big prayer. And the God nod is that he is letting us stay here for our oldest daughter to graduate from the
Mm,
school that she's worked so hard to. And so
yeah.
those little God nods of where God is like, I got you
Mm.
and I love you this much.
Oh, I
That's
love that.
amazing.
That is amazing, and sometimes they are so private, right? Like,
Yeah.
just, just in our own homes, just if we're
Mhm.
cleaning the kitchen or whatever, sometimes they're
Mhm.
just very, very private, and just to be able
Yeah.
to say, "Thank you, Jesus. Thank you for seeing me.
Yes.
Thank you for
That
responding and for
song,
knowing me."
that beautiful song are things I would definitely, encourage anybody that if they're struggling, listen to Christian music, go
Yeah,
put it on your Spotify
yeah,
or different things like that because Christian music can really speak to you as well.
yeah. Well, thanks so much, Monica. This has been a
Thank
joy,
you.
and I
Yes.
like
See you
saying goodbye
soon.
to you knowing that I will see you probably very soon.
Yes. We'll try to go get our exercise class in.
That's right. That's right. Oh, thanks so much for being here with us today,
Awesome.
Monica.
God bless. Thanks, Heather.